I'd hope, I'd hope he'd think at this stage I'm passing the test. I'm doing okay. I'm on the right path.
You've spoken in the past openly and in a courageous way about your own experiences with depression and PTSD. I wonder how much of those experiences you think are related to having to handle this kind of hatred.
Listen, I think, firstly, both as a lawyer, but also as the mayor, I've met people going through some really severe, post-traumatic stress disorder. So, I wouldn't want to equate what I'm going through with what they've been through. They've been the victim of crime, or they've been through torture as an asylum seeker or refugee. Not just the 24 hours a day, 7 days a week nature of the job as it is now in the 2020s. Very different to when the mayor first began in 2000, or very different to a ministerial job, which I've had. And so I know what the pressure is there. It is all consuming. And I really, it came to the fore during the pandemic, because during the pandemic, I was doing lots of work supporting Londoners going through this crisis. And it was a professional said to me, by the way, Sadiq, you're exhibiting, have you thought about getting yourself checked out and stuff? And I was depressed during the pandemic because, I thrive on a variety of things, which I didn't realize make me mentally fit. What do I mean? So if you and I were talking, we'd be talking about physical fitness, right? And I'd be saying, I play football to stay fit, or I play tennis to stay fit. I eat sensible things to stay physically fit. What you don't realize is actually there are things you do that are keeping you mentally fit. You don't realize that. So the things that keep me mentally fit, I now know because of the pandemic, because I stopped doing them in the pandemic. Playing football with my mates, going out with my mates, going out with my family, going to a gig, going to work and mixing and mingling with my colleagues. That sort of, what I didn't realize until the pandemic was those things were keeping me well. Take those things away and I became unwell. I mean, I wasn't medicalized, but I lost my mojo. I small D depression. And so now I've got to do those things to stay mentally fit, just like we've got to do things to stay physically fit. And I think we've got to talk about it because blokes don't talk about it. Ethnic minorities don't talk about it. And we know lots of men end up killing themselves. And so, I was inspired to talk about it because I saw the ultimate alpha male, Alistair Campbell, talking about it, right? And to be fair, Prince William and Harry talked about it as well. I thought it was important, A, for me to explain why I'd lost my mojo. But secondly, I thought again, this sounds really cringe, but if I talk about it, I'm hoping that just like Alice has given me courage, maybe somebody else will want to talk about it or get help, or just to ask themselves the question, what can I do to keep myself being fit and stuff, just like you would about with physical fitness. And also, I think there's a stigma around this that we've got to get rid of. It's taboo. It can't be taboo and stuff.
I think the other thing that you haven't mentioned, I think because you don't want to draw attention to yourself and you're probably too modest, but I know that when people suffer bereavements or people lose loved ones in something like the Grenfell Tower tragedy, you will give out your personal contact details and you will attend those funerals. And I can only imagine the toll that takes and the empathy that requires at the same time as conducting a professional life alongside this personal connection.
Yeah, I mean, I decided when I first got elected as mayor that whenever there was a bereavement because of a violent death, I'll come to Grenfell in a second, I would write to them personally, give my details, and get in touch. So it's important for a variety of reasons, not least because, but for the grace of God, that could be me, my daughters, my nephews, my nieces, right? And I'd want the mayor to reach out to me to it means that I understand what they're going through, but I can try and change policy to reduce that. Grenfell Tower, I remember vividly, June 2017. I remember getting the phone call. I remember seeing the images. I remember, and then early the next morning, I went to the tower. It's still on fire. But let me be frank, that could be my family in that tower block. That could be my family in the tower block. And so it's personal, not just the community, to the bereaved, to the next of kin. It's personal to all of us who care about these things, but also those of us who are from a council estate, frankly speaking. And so, I did go to lots of funerals, and the interesting thing about those funerals is they were in churches, they were in mosques, they were different denomination churches, they were secular, and they were really, really hard for the families. So so I don't want to put myself in the same bracket, but but they were hard, man, because you had families who'd gone to bed thinking they were in their home. Your home is, where you feel most safest, right? And they never woke, or they were awake. They rang 999, which is what you do when you're in danger, and they were given bad advice for a variety of reasons, which the inquiries got into and stuff. And it's hard. And so, I would say, in a respectful, humble way, I've probably attended more funerals than any politician, you know, we've ever had. Met more bereaved families than we've ever had, with awful terror attacks as well. And so, but it's important for me to do that because, Londoners see me as their leader, and I should be sharing the grief with them. I should be sharing the pain with them, and it's important for me to do so because I learn every day. I grow as a person, but B, they shouldn't be suffering in silence by themselves. And my job is to articulate and advocate what they're going through and stuff. And so, it's hard, but I think it's part and parcel of the job.
Final question, Sadiq. Although you are staying for Fading with Friends, which is where you get to be agony uncle for listeners around the country. But my final question for this interview is what you think your dad would say to you now.
I, I think, he'd be he'd be proud. But my dad wasn't one for, nor is my mum. There's no one for baubles and trophies and stuff. And the key thing is, I don't think it'll blow his mind. Look, to give you some context, when I was growing up, I never saw an Asian man in a suit going to work because in a uniform, yes, bus driver, train driver, factory worker. And so that's not the experience I had growing up. My dad had that experience in Pakistan, India, and Australia. But he wanted his kids to succeed, work hard at school, listen to your teachers, get a decent job, be a decent person. And I think it would have blown his mind to think that, one of his kids could be a parliamentarian, could be going to the cabinet, could be the mayor or whatever. And it blown his mind because, we're all ambitious, right? And so it's what your ambition is. And I think, one of the things that I try and get across to young Londoners and, is to dream the impossible, be ambitious. And I think he'd have been more proud of his city than of me, actually. He'd be more proud of London, that London's chosen one of his kids to be the mayor. He'd probably be checking more if I'm praying 5 times a day properly, if I'm being a good parent, if I'm looking after my mum, those sorts of things. Because all this other stuff doesn't matter. This is all white noise. It's all about being a decent person, being good to your family, being a good human being and stuff. And, my dad was a believer. He did believe in the afterlife. He did believe in, passing the test on this world. And I'd hope he'd think at this stage I'm passing the test. I'm doing okay. I'm on the right path.
I hope you enjoyed that video. Be sure to check out the full episode of How to Fail wherever you get your podcasts. And also make sure you're following us on social media for all the latest updates.